Everybody. Oh,
It's going live.
we're good. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is David Ainsworth. I'm the head of communications for the United Nations Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Welcome to the third day of the fourth meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group on the Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. We're here in Nairobi at UNEP headquarters. And I'll provide for you a quick update on things that happened yesterday and just guide you through what's going to be on the way today. So yesterday, as you know, we had all of the contact groups begin and do work. So 6 contact groups met. The overall characterization is that progress is being made, but it is much slower than expected. At the current pace, we're going to need to make sure we add some more sessions to move forward. Contact group number 1 met yesterday, and they were dealing with mostly the question of goal A under the framework. The idea that they wanted was to really take away the brackets in the text and not add any new text. For those of you who aren't as familiar with the process, what governments do is if they introduce ideas for which there's no full consensus, you put square brackets around that text. So for the framework, for its goals and its targets, there are many areas of the text where you will see, a sentence or a couple of sentences, but then elements in square brackets as well. So that first contact group was really looking at that, and the real polarization was really over the numeric nature of that goal, the question of whether we can get that number and how that would work. Contact group 2 met and also didn't get very far. They were dealing primarily with target 7 on pollution. Now, the text for this target has ballooned with a lot of new introductions. Now, it's important to note that this target 7 on pollution under the framework is much more expansive than previous targets we had on pollution under the Aichi one. This target of pollution doesn't only deal with questions of nitrogen and phosphorus, for example. It looks at all land-based sources of pollution, and it also has an element on plastic pollution. So that's why this text is very, very difficult. Contact group 3, which deals with target 13, which is the target that relates to access and benefit sharing. And they're looking at that. Now, this is particularly challenging because under this framework, there's a division of opinions on how we will deal with the question of digital sequence information, how that works with the ABS issue. Contact group 4 met. They made a great deal of progress. They finished the targets that were left over from the Geneva meeting. That's in particular targets 20 and 21. And then they also addressed the question of the new target, 22, on gender. So they made progress on that. Contacts group 5 and 6 also sought to move forward, but there was a great deal of challenges for that as well. Today in the morning, contact group 1 will be meeting, and they will, I guess, continue this discussion of goal A, hoping to reduce the text even more. We'll also have the Friends of the Chair for targets 1 to 3 of the framework, and those are the targets that relate really towards protection of biodiversity at ecosystem species and genetic resource level. At lunchtime today, there will be an information session about the Global Environment Facility, and I would encourage people to follow that. The Global Environment Facility, as you know, is the financial mechanism for the convention. It's what parties turn to when they need money to help implement the convention. The Global Environment Facility recently concluded a very, very generous round of financing for their 8th round, of a very high number, including a huge percentage for biodiversity. So that information session will talk about GEF financing, and it'll probably also talk about the GEF Early Action Grants. Just to let you know, these Early Action Grants are money that's going to be made available to parties right away so they can prepare for implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework even while they're moving forward. So I encourage you to go to that lunchtime session. At the same time, there's also a Friends of the Chair for Target 13 over lunch. This afternoon, there will be a Friends of the Chair for Section J of the framework, and then also Contact Group 4 on targets 18 and 19. And then these poor delegates will continue to work through the evening. They'll have Contact Group 6 on Sections A to E of the framework, and then Contact Group 2 on Target 8 and Sections 1 to 6 will begin. Target 8 is the one relating to climate change, and we'll take a look at that. One thing just to note, I know the reporters in the room, remember we spoke with David Obura and Paul Ledley about the science briefs that they presented yesterday. The parties were using those briefs extensively in their discussions yesterday and will continue to do so as well. So just to let you know, so that's how we'll move forward. The groups will have extensive discussions. The contact groups, the goal is to reduce the text, streamline it as much as possible. Because remember, at the end of this meeting, we need to have as much as 80% of this text ready to be adopted by the COP. Now, at the end of today, there'll be an assessment to the co-chairs of the night, and tomorrow, which is Friday the 24th, there will be a stock-taking plenary. And so that's when parties and organizations will have an expression of what they're looking at as far as the status and how things are going. This meeting continues until Sunday the 26th, and potentially actually till quite late. So that's what we're looking at for moving forward on that. With regard to today, we're going to have a couple of press conferences. The Global Youth Biodiversity Network will have a press conference today, and also a press conference by the International Indigenous Forum as well at 2:45. That's what I've got for you. Are there any questions from the floor?
So, David.
Stella, maybe could you use the microphone? That would be you online. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So, David, about what you just said, that this event needs to have at least 80% of the text finished. So does that mean that in Montreal, the negotiation would be the remaining 20%, or this 80% is also open for renegotiation?
Sure, let you know. So there's a phrase under the convention is that nothing is agreed until everything's agreed. So indeed, adoption of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework at COP15 in Montreal will only take place once everything is agreed. What happens though is that when delegates get to COP, there are opportunities for them to continue to negotiate it, but this is only one issue on the table. The COP agenda has other matters, and so there's a real danger of having a tremendous overload if we don't finish it. So the goal for this meeting was to make sure that we could get clean text as much as possible, and that figure of 80% is what people have been talking about moving forward. So there's only a 20% more of the text to negotiate in Montreal. The idea is that parties have to make decisions, have to move on compromise, have to get this text ready, so that when they get to Montreal, it's only a small closing of the gap they need to move forward on. Hope that helps. Other questions? No other questions? No other comments? I can't actually see the chat online. I don't know if there are questions from people online. Just take a look. Yeah.
No.
There are no questions online?
Maybe I will ask.
Yeah, please do. Wait, this is your opportunity, because I'm supposed to be going at least till 9:45. Please do pass the mic.
Hello, I'm Diwakar Pakuril from Nepal. So can you please clarify more on the progress made on the new target? I think you said something about they made significant progress about target 22, but what actually is that? Thank you.
Okay, so apologies, I don't have the text for Target 2 right in front of me, but the report we had in the Bureau this morning was that there was good progress made on Target 22. First of all, just letting everybody in the room know, and those online, is that Target 22 is new. In the original conception of the framework, we didn't have a target on gender related, so this is an important new addition for it as well. The sense is that there's a great deal of consensus by parties on what that target's going to look like, and we'll move forward. The one thing I can say is that UN Women will be holding a press briefing tomorrow here in this room, and they'll give their assessment of how things are moving forward. But my initial informal conversations with them is that while they were happy with the way things move forward, they thought that maybe we should just have an additional discussion. So I'm sorry I don't have those specific conversations, but maybe I'll connect you also with UN Women today as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. From the back, can we get the mic?
Morning, I'm Aruna.
Hold on one second, we'll get the mic just because I want people online to hear. Go please.
Morning, I'm Aruna Chandrasekhar from Carbon Breathe. I wanted to figure out what was the debate on pesticide pollution, because I think around Target 7 there was some debate, various different countries, and nutrient pollution as well as plastics. So what is the current state of play?
Okay, so as I said, this new target on pollution, it's quite complicated because the previous IHE target really just dealt with the question of nutrient loading, right? So first of all, let's take these components. So the question of nitrogen and phosphorus, and the primary sources for those really come from, there's some stuff from energy use, which is part of it, but the largest thing is from agriculture, right? So this is the use of fertilizers and runoff. And so the question is can we reduce these amounts, but can we do that in a way that's not going to compromise food production? Because remember, when we're doing all of these different parts, there's almost this trinity of issues we look at. We look at the protection of biodiversity, we look at the protection of the climate, and we look at the protection of the food systems that which our populations rely on. And so the question with nitrogen and phosphorus is, how can we reduce this pollution without reducing the use of these so much that we affect food supply? So part of it is going to be, can we come up with methods to introduce more effective use of these fertilizers? Can we come up with ways to minimize this kind of runoff? So that's one thing. The question with pesticides is exactly the same thing as well, is that, can we have ways to reduce or eliminate pesticides without having a substantial reduction in food supply as well? The other issue with pesticides too is that there are different regulations in different countries and on different pesticides. There are some where a simple reduction of the amount of pesticide will be a tremendous benefit to biodiversity, but there's some for which even the most minute amounts are deadly to certain populations as well, and so that's the question that we have to look at for there. And the plastic pollution is a whole new area that's coming on forward. As we know, here at the United Nations Environment Assembly earlier this year, they agreed to move forward on a treaty for plastics pollution, which is great. This target feeds into it. There's a proposal to eliminate plastics that are going into the sea within a certain period of time. And so the question is how does that tie into those existing negotiations? It's a very positive step forward to have an all-embracing, very, very broad pollution target, but as you can appreciate, it makes it more challenging to move forward on those different comments. Thanks. Other questions? You can take another one. No one's taking the floor. So I know you were shy yesterday about taking up too much time. Go ahead, please.
Right.
I'll need but you'll need the microphone again.
Yes.
Is there new wording that is being suggested, especially towards the latter part of what you were saying? Is there new wording that's being suggested on pesticide risk and not just in terms of quantity? Because I think yesterday as part of the scientist briefing, the scientists were talking about, you could cut back on quantity, but even a small amount of particularly harmful pesticides is devastating for biodiversity loss. So is there any new wording that's emerging that we're seeing?
Thanks for the question. I don't have the wording in front of me specifically now, so I can't comment on it, but I would say you should take a look at the text. But that is one of the issues, is what are we going to look at that substantial risk, because I think there's a variety of elements there. Okay, everyone. Thanks very much. So the next time we'll see you here will be in, I guess, about an hour and a half, where we'll start with the 11 p.m. press briefing. So thanks to everybody. Good luck and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.